Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Leah, and I am a midlife transition specialist, television host of Awakened with Leah, the Next Chapter, and an author. And I support recently divorced women in midlife who are feeling stuck in fear, self doubt, and uncertainty about their next chapter to connect to their truth, recognize themselves again, and gain clarity on what they really want so they can feel the freedom of their past and lead with confidence into their next chapter. So, today's topic, we will be discussing secret judgment and is secret judgment holding you back? So I'm going to start off with a question I'd like everyone to ponder. And that is, what do you think it would mean if others were to look at you and say you were judgmental? What does that mean to you? And we have a guest, so I'll have you ponder that question while I bring our guest up. Hello,
That,
Janice. Welcome.
well, thank you so much for having me on stage again. And if you could just repeat the question again, because it was fading in and out for me, so I didn't hear the whole question.
Yes, so I'm wondering what you think it would mean if others were to look at you and say you were judgmental. So what does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, wow. What that would mean to me is how are they judging me and why? Um, I am assuming, although I don't never like to say assuming, but I have to assume that it's maybe something I said or did that maybe perhaps they didn't like, but how would I feel about that? I think it would hurt a little bit, but I would want to dive a little bit, excuse me, a little bit further into that to see if we can have a constructive conversation to maybe rule some things out or rule some things in. Maybe they don't, maybe it's their perception that is just totally misguided. But if I don't have that opportunity to have a discussion with them, I think that would hurt.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your response. So, what would like to try to do is really uncover what judgment is because it gets a bad rap. And the truth is, we were born to judge for survival in the world, and it's kind of what we do. But we end up saying that judgment is bad. And there's nothing wrong with judgment, but what we don't want is to have the unconscious ruling our behavior. So we want to bring some awareness to that, and we want to accept and acknowledge those pieces in us, because then when we embrace it and pull it in and say, okay, this is part of me. That's when we're able to intentionally let go of the parts that don't work for us. So it's important to understand that although we need judgment to be able to discern between safe and not safe, there is judgment that is associated with negative energy that is not serving us. And we want to be able to understand those parts and let those parts go.
Ah, I see what you're saying about that. And as you were kind of diving into that, it brought me back to a scenario quite a few years ago. For instance, going into if you have to go to an emergency room and the emergency room is crowded. And obviously, especially in a peak time where this particular incident, it's after a hurricane. So there's a lot of people in the emergency room. And, some people might judge you if they call your name or whatever. And I always say to myself in that situation, well, that's the triage effect. They're not judging me. They have to triage. And it made me think that, sometimes maybe we have to ourselves triage our emotions, maybe. I'm not sure if that
No, it totally made sense. It's like evaluating without judgment. But first we need to understand that there's healthy judgment, right? Instead of beating ourselves up for judging. And the reason it's so important to release those parts of the judgments is because it frees us to have more positive energy available to us. So, if we're judging everything as good, bad, right, wrong, it's very black and white thinking, and it cuts out all of our options for the gray areas. But when we wear the mask of secret judgment so no one will see, we're not able to be as honest with ourselves as we could. And that could get in the way because if we don't want to be seen as judgmental but secretly judge, that could block us from not connecting with people the way that we could. So, for an example, if you can judge good, bad, right, wrong right away, and it keeps you safe, right? And so, for example, one way could be to stay on the attack so you don't have to defend yourself. So if I'm on the attack and pissed off all the time, people stay away from me. So it's a way to keep people at an arm's length away so that I don't get hurt. And it's easier to get mad at the world than to let people get close to you. But then you may feel lonely and thinking, who has my back? And well, it's hard for someone to have your back when you're not open enough to create a relationship with them. And if you have your boxing gloves up, or on all the time, protecting yourself, no one can get in to get to know you and to connect on a deeper level. Make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And of course, I identify with boxing gloves because I love kickboxing. So thank you for sharing that amazing analogy. And I think it holds truth to, kind of unmasking ourselves and, maybe put that person in our position or, we don't know a lot of times what somebody else is going to. So, maybe it's a combination of the unmasking or triaging or, sympathize with somebody or empathizing before we actually know what is transpiring with that person. I think we would have more meaningful type of conversation.
Yeah, I mean, a large part of our disconnection to ourselves and to others is actually happening unconsciously. So we want to bring some awareness, because we don't even realize that we're judging others, and typically we judge others based on how we're judging ourselves, and then we want to be accepted, but we don't even fit into our own image of being perfect. So we want to create a lot of the unconscious and bring it to our conscious level, because then at least it brings us options of what we want to do with it. And most of our judgments are that are inside us are based on our beliefs. I mean, we are ruled by unchanged beliefs that have been passed on to us from generation to generation, and these beliefs are creating our judgments, our expectations, or the rules that we make, and in essence our reality. And we become a copy of other people's beliefs because as we grow up, we're handed these set of beliefs very early on in life with mom and dad, and then our teachers, and then our friends, or anyone of influence in our lives, and we don't even question these beliefs. Yet we so easily punish ourselves for not being who we think we should be. And very often through my journey, I've asked myself the questions, whose should is this anyway? And that has allowed me to really uncover a lot of things that I wasn't aware of, because I truly did think that these were my shoulds. And people have opinions. They say and do things based on their belief system. So, not taking what someone says or does for fact, um, will help us on our journey of recognizing the truth of who we are. I mean, if someone says you're stupid and you grow up thinking you are what people say, and then you spend all your time and energy proving how stupid you are and hiding your truth, you're walking through life thinking you have this black cloud over your head and wondering why you don't feel fulfilled and happy. And it's because our beliefs that are not our beliefs in the first place are ruling our dreams of any type of peace or happiness or fulfillment. Um, and also, I mean, when we practice not taking things personally, all of a sudden we don't need to place our trust in what others say or do. And that speaks to our personal power.
Right. And the other thing, it brought me back to psychology class and this exercise that we did. And I think we've all heard the term, the energy is so thick you could cut it with a knife. And
Yes.
right. And maybe not knowing why, but you just feel that energy. So the exercise was, I was the person that was sent out of the room, and the instructor advised everyone, okay, when Janice initially comes back in, we're not going to say anything. We are just going to think terrible thoughts. Janice is a bad person. She's this, she's that. And let's see how she reacts to the energy. So he called me back in the room, and I walked back in, and immediately I feel that bad energy. So I am standing there kind of feeling mortified, but I knew that there was a greater meaning to this exercise. Not sure what it was at the moment. And after about, honestly, it felt like 2 hours. And I'm sure maybe it was a minute and a half to 2 minutes. He said, okay, I want you to come up to me. He says, and I want you to hold your arms straight out in front of you, which I did. And with all that bad, he says, and I want you to resist what I am going to do. So now I'm thinking, okay, where is this going? So he put his arms on my arms, and immediately my arms went down. And he said, thank you. I want you to go out in the hallway again. I went out in the hallway, calls me in, and as he's instructing everyone while I'm not in the room, again, not knowing what's going on, he says, okay, when Janice comes back in the room, I want you to think amazing, great things about Janice. Janice is great. Janice, she might be having a bad hair day. She probably should get her hair dyed, but whatever. She looks beautiful, or she is this and that or that. Whatever good things you can think or um, say to yourself about Janice, think them and project them out. I come back in the room. Energy is totally different. Nobody says or does anything for about a minute and a half. The instructor asked me to put my hand straight out again. He says, I want you to resist me. And so I was kind of expecting what was going to happen. But this time, as gentle as my hands were out, they were stronger because I felt that good energy and I was able to stand for myself, so to speak. So I always think back to that exercise. I hope that.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that. That is a powerful exercise. And I mean, it talks to how we absorb other people's energy. And what happens is we start making assumptions of what people are implying by either their words or actions. So in this particular case, their actions. And when we don't ask for clarification, we start making up stories in our head and these assumptions, and they're not true. And when we actually stop with the stories in our head that we're making up and we seek clarification, seek the truth instead. I mean, this speaks to also with relationships, intimate relationships that we have. uh, that will get so much better when we don't make these assumptions based on how somebody entered the room, because we don't know what they were thinking and feeling at that moment. So that's a powerful exercise. I'm so glad that you shared that with me.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to share that. I always go back to that moment because even in particular situations, for instance, visiting my son in the hospital recently, if I go in with, I'm the mom and I'm in charge here and this, that, and the other thing, well, I'm going to send those vibes out. But, if you go into it with, okay, I'm the mom, I need to find out what's going on, but in a more calm manner, you're going to get more of a response. So I always try to think back to that particular moment in that class. And thank you so much for allowing me to share that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, even if we're showing up the way we think that is the proper way to show up, people feed off the vibes of what we're even thinking. So if we're talking shit about them in our head, behind their back, they still pick up on that vibe. And I know that earlier I had mentioned about how judgment holds us back from accepting what is. And I wanted to mention that it can also have an impact on our decision making abilities, because it causes us not to consider and evaluate all the possible options. And when we're open to possibilities, it allows us to access that information. And when we are judging, we can't see all the possibilities available to us. And that's the one where judgment's associated with the negative energy, as opposed to the energy of discerning between safe and not safe. Um, so, I think the first place to start is to bring awareness to our belief system. I mean, every time we uncover a belief that we inherited and we swap it for the truth, we regain our power, because the truth is what sets us free. And, when we do start to challenge these beliefs, it creates fear, and our ego wants to keep us safe. But and typically, I mean, self doubt arises when our desires are being challenged by our beliefs. But remembering that this is what sets us free is worth taking that deeper dive into those parts of ourselves. And that in each moment, things change, but striving to do your best in each moment, regardless of the outcome, will decrease the self judgment and beating ourselves up. And if anybody wants to join in, please help yourselves. Um, and if you have any questions regarding secret judgment, I'd be happy to answer anybody's question. I'll give it a couple minutes. And if not, I hope that this discussion of secret judgment has served everybody today. And if there are any specific topics you would like me to speak on further, please don't hesitate to let me know. And again, this is Leah, and I am a midlife transition specialist, television host of Awakened with Leah, and an author. And I'm here to support and add value. Oh, we have a guest. Hi, Howard.
Hi, Leah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
having me on.
joining.
Yeah, of course. I love the topic. I love what you were talking about, and it's something that I teach, write, and speak on my own journey. So
Really?
yeah. So I just thought that I would add to the conversation that um, a lot of times we hide from ourselves where that judgment is,
Yeah.
until we can't take it at the surface of our lives anymore, and then we're forced to follow the path of self awareness if we get vulnerable enough with ourselves, that will allow us to see where these limiting beliefs are coming from and why. So I just,
Absolutely. I'll never forget the first time that I was asked if I judged, and my knee jerk reaction was, no, I don't judge. And I didn't want anyone to see me as judgmental. And the truth of the matter is, I really didn't know that I judge as much as I did judge. And there
mm-hmm.
was so much of it I didn't understand. So it was a secret judgment. And that was definitely holding me back. And it's, we need to start recognizing where we're judging. And the ownership part of that is, you know, uh, for lack of a better word, uncomfortable in the beginning, because it's
Mm-hmm.
looking at that side of ourselves like, holy moly, like this is how I showed up, right? And
Right.
then, but taking ownership of it and accepting those parts and letting go of the parts that's not serving us is okay. And understanding that, as soon as we make a judgment on judgment that it's good or bad, it's not serving us, right? So it's about
Right.
standing up tall and saying, yeah, I judge, but I also have discernment between judgment of being safe and judgment of that's really not serving me, and working through that.
Right, exactly. And I think it comes down to intent. You have to be tired enough of what the reality has been for you in order to really dig in and finally try and get to where the source has been and take some ownership without any shame, without any guilt, without any regret, but just with the pure desire to transform and transcend and to understand more of how reality works with each one of us. Um, if we knew, if everybody knew the answers, then we wouldn't have any questions. There wouldn't be anything to change or evolve into. So if something isn't right at the surface or not going the way that you want, there is an answer that's there. It's just that been, you haven't questioned correctly or been ready to receive yet what that information is. And so one of the key things that I teach as far as helping sort of grease the wheel is that there is no shame, guilt, and regret in your path of evolution. Like, that has been the best you could do at each moment. So once you look at it that way, it's much easier to reflect upon, wow, I can't believe I thought that way about myself. Where did that come from? Did that come from my parents? Did that come from an experience I had? Was it just embedded in my genetics over many generations? Either way, that doesn't serve me anymore. So what's a more empowering, maybe a little uncomfortable at first, belief that I can adopt about myself, that I can walk in a little bit more each day, that may help me? And if you have that little bit of faith to just trust this new energy that you put out each day without the expectation of an instant miracle, even though it can happen that way, that to me is how life transforms before your eyes.
Yeah, you know what? I agree 100%. You first have to have that moment of recognition, is why do the same things keep happening
Exactly.
over and over again? I I don't feel fulfilled. I'm not happy. I'm just going through the motions in life. And you have to have that moment of recognition. And some people will call it hitting rock bottom, before they could
Right.
even make that first step. And releasing the shame and guilt, because if we really understand shame and guilt, it's that we're living in other people's expectations of ourselves and of who we should be. And
Or a
so,
false notion of our own.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Well, the false notion is that we've been living under these adopted beliefs that other people have given to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, we want to take that inventory of our belief system, because the truth is what sets us free. So we need to discern, between our perception and what the truth is. And then understand that we were doing the best we could with what we knew and what we were capable of. And so
Right.
instead of beating ourselves up when we uncover these truths and understand that, well, it's no wonder I did this because this is what I believed, but it wasn't actually my belief. And so, you start unraveling all that with kindness and compassion to ourselves in order to be able to step out of that.
Right. Because the truth, at least from my experience of what I've experienced about life, is that we're all perfect on our own path. We're all perfect evolutions of our awareness and understanding and our learnings at each moment in time. So there is no true imperfection with each one of us. It's just where we're at on the path of awareness and understanding to our, let's say, our infinite nature, or what is truly possible of us. And each person is sort of pacing that time in a way that's tolerable for them. So that's why I said that it's really important that you're truly tired of the way things have been, because that's the only way you'll really truly dig in and have the yearning that's necessary in order to receive what the universe wants to shower upon you, which is this incredible wisdom that sits before us, just waiting for each soul to kind of open up to it. So it's an interesting journey. And you mentioned something earlier about rock bottom, and one of the reasons I'm so devout in the work and putting this out and amplifying it as big as I can is because some people are so stubborn. They have to go through so much suffering, and it's so unnecessary if we just had more awareness of the wisdom that exists for us to get through it sooner and without as much suffering. Like, this should be taught in schools. So anyways, some people unfortunately do have to hit rock bottom, but I hope that it's my wish and hope that doesn't have to happen going forward.
Yeah, and I think that as for people who have experienced a lot, we're we're so focused on the intent of giving people hope and giving people value, and not, so we can prevent them from going in, hitting rock bottom. But what I find is that a lot of people are not ready to receive yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about just, staying on our side of the road and still providing that, because one day they will be ready to receive that. And it's, the word stubbornness to me is, I find it a little harsh, because I remember being told that I was stubborn, and I really didn't feel that I was being stubborn. What I felt was, I felt powerless and hopeless to make a change. And it wasn't until, for whatever reason, that I was able to receive one tiny bit of information where I felt a tiny bit of hope, that I was able, first of all, from that hope, to receive a little bit of that information that allowed me to take a step forward in my healing journey. Make
That's
sense?
wonderful. Oh yeah, it
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. A lot of
Yeah.
times stubbornness can be a mask for fear. And so I guess one of the ways I think that might help that sort of, and again, this comes down to, does a person who wants help, when you give them the information, if they don't take it in, it's like you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, when what helps in that transition? What can help that? And I think the key in that is, how do you reduce the fear, and you increase faith? And how do you increase faith? Well, you do it through logic, through the understanding that life has supported you on every step of your journey to this moment, even to these words that are coming into your ears right now. So
Yeah.
life is here to support each one of us. It will present the information. Now, it's always going to be up to the individual how fast they want to take it in.
Yeah.
But it helps to have that understanding that the change is going to be positive and relieving, not painful.
Absolutely. And that's where I think we all come in, where if we've experienced it and navigated through any type of difficult experience, is to share that wisdom with others, because a lot of us are in a place where we can't see solutions or opportunities. And, my the whole purpose of my television show is to give people hope who can't afford coaching or can't afford therapy. And it's about them being able to resonate with all the different experiences that other people have had, whether it's losing your job or anything to do with addiction or divorce, and to see that it is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
it,
awesome.
yeah, and because and when they're ready to receive, they will, they will be there. But I think a lot of times we don't even realize what's in front of our face I I don't know if you've ever heard the example of where God brought the boat, the plane. Do you remember that?
Of course.
And
Yeah.
it's
It's one of
okay.
my favorite examples to
Okay,
people
so I
that
can't even repeat
are
it
stuck.
exactly how it is,
Yeah.
but it's like it's right in front of you and you don't realize. And I do believe that a lot of that stems from fear because you think you're going to lose something. You don't look at it as that you're going to gain something.
Right. Or you're so set in the way that you feel the information's going to come to you that you don't see the way divinity
Yes.
expresses help and insight. And if you want me, I can give the 2 second story for people
Yeah,
if they're
please
listening.
do.
Okay. Basically, there's a guy in the ocean and he's drowning and he says, God, help me. And all of a sudden, a boat comes by and, offers to help him on the boat. And he says, nope, I'm fine. God will save me. And so the boat drives off. And then there's a seaplane that lands. He says, God, please help me. And a seaplane lands and they offer to help him. And he says, no, thank you. God will save me. So the seaplane takes off. And then there's a helicopter that comes by and lowers a ladder. And he says, no, thank you. God will save me. And then he ends up drowning and dying. And he goes up to heaven and he sees God. And he says, I don't understand. He says, I called out to you. I believed in you. He says, why weren't you there to help me? And God says, what are you talking about? I sent a boat, a plane, a helicopter. What more do you want? So it's a simple example of how there's so many things in life that are there to help us. And when we see it only one way or very strictly in one paradigm, um, we're missing so much of the divinity that's around us that's there to help us. And, this could go into all sorts of discussions from wisdom to medicine to science there's a whole bunch of discussions we could have about this. But anyways, it's a very appropriate example in today's world.
Oh, it's so appropriate. And I love that analogy because it's so true and it's also it speaks to us recognizing that in this moment we can't get to where we want to be from where we're at. So we have to change it up a little. We have to shift our energy. So, it could be the energy of taking a nap, dancing, just shifting our energy
Mm,
from a better feeling
it's great.
place and
Yeah.
building the momentum from there. Because when you feel better, you are that creator and visionary, or you have the ability to allow those messages in.
No question about it. I think in today's world where we're being assaulted by so much information and a predominant amount of it being negative, we have to feed our minds like we want to feed our bodies and our soul and nourish it with making sure that we stay on the narrow path, which means that away from the negativity. And not that we don't want to be aware of what's going on in the world. You always want to be aware, but stay focused on the positivity and what feeds your soul. So if that means turning off the TV and dancing in your house in the middle of the day to shift your energy, or going for a walk in nature, or like you say, just taking a nap and changing up the schedule, it's exactly right. It's really important today.
Yeah, and think of how simple it is. If our only job is to care about how we feel and trust that everything else will fall into place, I mean, how powerful is that?
It's very powerful, and it's a great admission of faith that life will support us. We have to do our job. We have 50% of the way to go. Life will do the other 50%. But if we have faith that this is a loving, unconditionally loving, supporting universe, and that everything does have meaning, even some of the toughest things we go through, I think it really can set us on a beautiful, beautiful path going forward. And before my time's up here, just wanted to say, Leah, thank you for everything you do, and thank you for having me on and for this wonderful discussion today.
Thank you, Howard, for coming up. And I invite you to come up again if you would like, and any other time. I really appreciate your insight. Very, very valuable. Thank you.
Oh, my honor. And I will definitely jump on at another time when I see you on here. So thanks again.
Great. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Okay, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed my interaction with Howard. He brought a lot of value to this conversation and some new insight as well. And I invite anybody else to come on up if they have a question or if they would like to share some value. And if not, we will end the room for today. and be back next week with a new topic. And if there's any particular topic you would like me to speak on, please feel free to message me. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's been great, and we'll see you next time.